mean, it is amazing, the exquisite deliberate planning that came together to be able to generate the effects in the opening hours of this campaign.
Let's go.
Hey, thanks for joining us here at Integrity ISR. My name is Wes, and joining me today is Chad Hartman. He is our Senior Vice President for Global Solutions. Chad, how you doing today, man?
Pretty good, man. How you doing, Wes? It's been a fascinating few days for sure.
Yeah, I know I'm smiling because I'm excited to be with you, but definitely not smiling because of all the activity that's going on. The happenings in the Middle East right now have changed rapidly, far faster than some people probably expected. But from you and for your perspective, what are we seeing right now?
You know, obviously, you got to be hard pressed to say anyone has the fidelity to forecast what's going to happen at this early jump. We're still extremely early in this campaign on the fourth day. And it is a very significant event. We all know that there's a lot of overused word almost, but it applies here, the unprecedented nature of this entire operation, many different facets. But I think, while you say that, there are some things that we've looked at over time that I think this particular situation, this particular operation of Epic Fury is most certainly epitomizing. And one comes to mind for me that is a historic axiom, but is one that we don't necessarily always quite understand fully. And that is when we start looking at intelligence operations and then just kinetic or non-kinetic operations and be able to do that. And really what stands out, the key part of this is you're talking about intelligence-driven multi-domain operations. And if you do it right, it is incredibly powerful. And I think you've seen that. We've all witnessed this across the globe over just these last 4 days. But I think when you start to think about it, it's that realization of these seamless intelligence and operations coming together and doing it across all intelligence disciplines and across all domains. That tight coupling, that tight synchronization is ultimately important.
Now, your entire career really has been in C4 ISR. What are some things that you're seeing right now that are surprising or maybe new to you?
Maybe not surprising, but just to the scale and speed, right? We all know, if you look at modern conflict, and we've talked about this, how modern conflict is only getting more dynamic, more complex, more consequential, and seeing that. I think we're seeing that unfold right now. It doesn't mean that it's impossible to deal with. It means that you got to be able to keep pace with the change in the character of conflict. And it has certainly changed here in just the last few years. We've actually structured, coincidentally, courses that do just this, where we have tried to break the paradigm, the divide, if you will, between intelligence and operations. And so what we've done is taken a different slant and said, hey, how are we going to instruct some of our nations and forces out there when it comes to deliberate planning? And when we do that is we actually do it and bring it together coupled with deliberate ISR and deliberate operational planning, and how they are really tightly, or need to be tightly synchronized, and bring those together where they're not done independent. They feed each other. We also take the other side of that coin is that once you do that deliberate planning, how do you work in a very agile environment, a very dynamic environment, and be able to do those dynamic operations for both ISR and targeting fires and how you apply those fires. I think this campaign in particular really exemplifies that. If you look what took place, starting with the deliberate planning, I mean, it is amazing, the exquisite deliberate planning that came together to be able to generate the effects in the opening hours of this campaign, to be able to pull that complexity together, that intensive, meticulous intelligence planning that took place well ahead of time, and all the intelligence effort that went behind the scenes that nobody saw for just probably thousands of man hours, an incredible array of capabilities all coming together to be able to do that. But it was incredibly synchronized with operations. And those operations themselves were incredibly synchronized across all domains. If you look at what took place, and just the little tidbits have been let out and talked about in the press, you have space and cyber were early players in this thing, where they were not just providing additional surveillance capabilities and additional intelligence, but they were also generating effects to be able to kind of hit the Iranian command and control network, their eyes and ears, and to be able to shut them down at an opportune time as forces from a kinetic standpoint come roaring in, to maintain that element of surprise. That is complex planning. When you do that at that scale, and doing it across those many targets simultaneously to be able to have that effects where they're all synced to support each other, that's a lot of work. And so when you look at that, I think this is going to go down in history as a phenomenal case sample of being able to take exquisite, deliberate planning on both the intelligence and the multi-domain operations side, bring that together to generate the maximum results. I think another one that comes into play is you're seeing this quick transition, because today most targets are not static. They're mobile, they're highly dynamic, they're on the move, they're going. So this thing was designed to be able to achieve that surprise, affect those core leadership targets that they're going after, but also get after some of those mobile air defenses, catch them when they weren't necessarily ready and on the move, and also try to affect some of those over-the-horizon offensive capabilities that Iranians have, those surface missiles, namely, and those drones that are out there. So being able to affect them as much as possible, I think that was a great deliberate plan, but then they tightly looked and even took this one and coupled and synchronized it with their dynamic operations. Because as you have seen shortly after that, starting the first day, and certainly now, they're in a hunter-killer kind of mission. They're in a dynamic game where they're out there with packages of ISR and kinetic and non-kinetic operations going after, particularly those over-the-horizon offensive capabilities. And I think that's the next phase that we're in. It's a little more drawn out. It's certainly much more difficult than a deliberate campaign going after fixed targets. But when you get into that, they did a great job on that deliberate planning to set the stage to be able to take what was a pretty contested environment, make it much less contested now. So you have greater freedom maneuver. You can bring in additional ISR assets, eyes and ears, so you can now monitor the battle space to be able to affect those targets. I think that's what we're seeing. That's absolutely essential. It's something we've been talking about and instructing from a doctrinal and a tradecraft standpoint. But this is really a whole different level of taking what we have actually done in our line of work, on our business, and seeing it actually play out on a true execution cycle.
So 3 months ago, you and I sat down and had a conversation about how drones were changing the new kill zone. Can you talk about the ways that we may see drone warfare used by America?
I think it's not just America. I think we're a little later to this in some regards, because our asymmetric advantage has always been the high-end quality aspect, whether it be stealth, precision fires, all those aspects. That was an incredible asymmetric advantage we held over most of the world. I think some of the world is definitely growing in that capability, but now the character of the conflict is changing, where you have a technology that can actually make cheaper, less capable systems more effective at mass and scale. And it's reintroducing this old age concept of mass as a quality in of itself, quantity as a quality in of itself. The technology now is really enabling that, because they're not exquisite systems, but they're pretty capable in their own right. And when you can produce them at the price points that they're being generated much cheaper, and you can mass produce thousands of these things, that presents a whole different dilemma. And it gets very, very interesting. I think you see us coming into that at the right time. I think you're seeing that really great lessons that we've taken from other campaigns in the last few years in Ukraine, but also what we're garnering out of this for our future development. What's most important, I think, and this applies to us and everyone else out there when you start looking at it, if you think about what is getting through, we are probably intercepting, and I say we, it's the collective effort out there, the Gulf nations, Israel and us, on the United States side, but we are probably intercepting 90% or more, based on just what you see in the news reports of the missiles that are coming in and the drones that are being launched. But even that 10% can have an oversized strategic implications, as we're seeing today, last night and today, with some of these strikes on the embassy's consultant, and probably more importantly, you're going to see play out in the next few days is going to be the biggest issue, is trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and that maritime traffic there. The challenge you run into is you're fighting systems that cost maybe tens of thousands of dollars with systems that from a defensive standpoint cost millions of dollars. And that is a challenge, because if you keep going down that road, you can achieve high kill ratios of 90%, but at what cost? At some point, these are finite systems. And it's so much easier to produce the cheaper systems in the thousands than it is to take a high-end Patriot missile battery and be able to generate those at those kinds of numbers. So I think that's this dilemma, if you will. It's definitely playing out in the strategy. It was obviously knowing going into this campaign, the way they've designed it, the way they're going after it hard. The question is, are you going to be able to really roll it back, hit those key launchers on those missiles so that they may have more missiles, but not the ability to launch. And then you're going to be able to affect those drones in a way that you can actually turn the tide and not have the strategic consequences in the Strait of Hormuz or the diplomatic consulates being hit, and just the ripple effects that causes from a population standpoint.
The last question I have for you has to do with MDO. This campaign already, I've seen notes from CENTCOM and different outlets that are giving credit to cyber and Space Force, really kind of giving credit to the people that are usually like definitely unseen and you don't think of as like, war heroes. Is this a new flex of like what modern warfare 2026 and forward really is going to look like? What do you think about that inclusion of MDO in the headlines?
I think it has been for a number of years. Actually, it was just more quiet behind the scenes taking place. I think what's different is the scale. I think when you see in the past, space, let's take space as an example. Space could be characterized as a great enabler for the joint operations. I think you're at a point now, it's no longer an enabler. It is a core function that in its own right is generating powerful effects. That is, and what we do is we leverage it with all the domains. And the key is to synchronize it and synchronize each other to be able to do that. Cyber has that same capability. And I think you're at a point, in some regards, you can look at it and go, has our cyber capabilities really grown that much? I think they have. But I think more importantly, you're seeing other adversaries' capabilities go more and more digital. So there's some vulnerabilities there to be able to take advantage in the cyber domain. And I think if you do it right, the key is you put them all together. You don't do them independent. The best things that ever happen is where you are out there synchronizing effects from every domain to feed each other and do that. And it's not about, hey, you guys go in your own separate stovepipes and do your own planning. That's some hard lessons we've learned over the decades. And I think you're seeing the fruits of those labors now. And what you're seeing is just a phenomenal synchronization plan across all domains. And I think that is what is really highlighting things that we didn't talk a lot about in the past with space and with cyber. It's just the intelligence discipline. I mean, they come into this. You're starting to see little tidbits come out. But it is truly this incredible array of special reconnaissance from soft forces, human intelligence, traditional geospatial intelligence, whether it be space or airborne assets, doing that SIGINT and the different aspects of communications, electronic intelligence. I think there's another arena you probably don't hear as much about with measures and signatures intelligence and ASINT that is increasingly playing a big piece in these operations. I think that multi-domain operations synchronization we talked about is just as important on the intel side for all those different intelligence disciplines.
Well, it has been awesome hearing your insight on this, and I really appreciate your time. If you're watching this and you want to track along with us, go ahead and follow us on social media at Integrity ISR. Integrity ISR is a veteran-led defense company that trains people who protect the nation's most critical domains. We support American government and military, as well as our allied countries and industry as well, with mission-ready instruction, operational expertise, and intelligence-grade analysis. Chad, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And whereas I don't love why we get to have these conversations, I really do appreciate your input and your expertise in helping us stay on top of this.
Yeah, hey Wes, thanks again, man. Look forward to these. Like you said, it's never the right situation to be in to be able to talk about, but the key is to learn from them. And I think these are, as we go through, we all learn together, and I really enjoy doing these opportunities.